of this, we had to start somewhere. Maybe not that far back. As some of you are aware, Liz and I moved to Brisbane in 2005, and whilst we have done some touring and exploring in our old home state of Tasmania, it wasn't until we arrived in Queensland that we had ready access to this great land without worrying about that stretch of water known as Bass Strait. This episode is actually our first Outback trip. We joined a tag-along tour at Windora, which would take us through the northern Simpson Desert, up the Hay River track and back to Winton, before returning home to Brisbane. But remember, this was early days of lots of stills to tell the story. We thought it was worth sharing though. Hope you enjoy. First morning we were full of excitement and up at stupid o'clock. As we head up the Toowoomba Range, so too does the sun start to appear over the horizon. We arrive in Charleville around mid-afternoon, so some time for exploring before we book into our cabin for the night. We experience a bush dinner put on by the caravan park. What a great way to start. On to Windora today. This would take us through Quilpie, so we took some time for a cuppa and a look around the many works of art that are staggered around this quaint little town. We spot some wildlife not far up the road, then it's over the Cooper Creek and into Windora. Just 2 kilometres east of the town is the newly opened solar farm. It was officially opened in December 2008 with a total cost of $4.5 million. "80 kilometres west of Windora is the JC Ruins. Imagine what life was like in the township of Canterbury while you explore the ruins of the JC Hotel and Cemetery. Out here the land is scattered with native wells. This one served as a water source for the Mathaka people as they travelled throughout the land. There are many similar wells all across this dry region. While some are natural, others were man-made. Then it's on to visit the first of our border landmarks that we'd visit this trip. After Haddon's Corner, a quick stop at Dion's Lookout. This affords you a magical view of what lies ahead. Atop of the lookout is a monument erected in the memory of a local lad that was tragically killed in a helicopter accident in 1996. From there we stop in at the iconic Birdsville racecourse to kick the dust before heading into town to set up camp. We gather outside the Birdsville Hotel for a couple of group photos and a brief of the day's activities. This started with a trip to the Birdsville Museum and some time with local character John Menzies. The place was loaded with all sorts of memorabilia from years gone by. Then on to the bakery, another of Birdsville's iconic landmarks. Who doesn't love a camel pie? After the pie was digested, we started our epic adventure west towards the Simpson Desert. Time to wear down. After some playing around on Big Red, we head off to our first campsite. Due to late rains further north, Air Creek was still in flood, meaning we would have to take a detour to a shallow rocky section of creek before we could cross. But that's part of tomorrow's adventure, Bob tells us. As this being our first time out here, we were in awe of the landscape and how green and lush some of the growth was. Not what we were expecting. Arriving at camp, we set up the tent and prepared our evening meal, all the time soaking up the atmosphere, the sunset, and of course a little glass of red wine. Remember I said shallow rocky section? Well, after our morning brief we head off. Now I'm not sure how this works, but who am I to argue? The next thing we know, the boss is in the water checking the depth to ensure a safe passage for us all. It's not long and we rejoin the original track and negotiate the many sand dunes. Nothing like learning on the job. I may have inflated these tyres this morning as they looked a little bit flat. Whoops, as they heated up, so too did the pressure increase. Lesson 1 learnt. After filling in the holes, we're on our way again. After the morning brief, we head further west towards Poeppel Corner. This is the corner of 3 states, Queensland, South Australia and the Northern Territory. On the way we see some amazing dune formations and start to come across the desert salt pans. From here we start our way north and join the Hay River track. There is something about waking up in a remote location, surrounded by desert, a cool breeze, and the sounds of nothing. I am sure that there are many people that have put this into words more expressive than this. But we are really enjoying our time here. There's like a karma has set upon us. I don't want it to end. This junction signifies the start, or end, depending on which way you travel, to the Madigan Line. Named after Cecil Madigan, who in 1939 led 9 men and 19 camels into unexplored, trackless, waterless and an extremely harsh environment. The journey took 25 days in total and was led by one of the last true explorers. We set up camp not too far from here and again soak in the serenity of this whole experience. Oh, and we find some camel poo not far from camp, so maybe tomorrow we get lucky and see some in the wild. Not quite wild, but we came across these adventurous lot. They had joined a camel safari which left from Inaminka and would work their way through to Birdsville. They would walk alongside the camels that carried their supplies just like their forefathers did. What an amazing experience. They even picked up a straggler. This young one had appeared a couple of days ago and had decided to follow. Well, I guess it had to happen sometime. Yes, it rained overnight. Not much, just enough to be a pain. So a neat little trick when packing up your tent and tarp is to put a couple of shopping bags on your boots to keep them clean until you're ready to fold the tarp. Thanks, Marion. It goes to show that good things come to those that wait. Only a few k's up the road we come across a mob of wild camels. Interesting to watch as the big male corrals the group and heads them to the top of a dune, all the time keeping an eye on us until he deems them to be a safe distance away. We make our way out to Lake Caroline, which is situated around 10 kilometres from the main track and well worth the detour. My research unveiled that this does fill when big wet seasons are experienced in the north. But it had been many years since this had happened. Next stop sees us arrive at the Tropic of Capricorn, and of course you have to stop and take that photo or two. Then we make our way to Batten Hill. The Batten Hill bush camp is shaded by large gum trees and has covered picnic tables. The facility includes flushing toilets, hot showers via a donkey boiler, bush kitchen and access to bore water. We were to stay 2 nights as tomorrow we would join members of the Bookie family for a bush tucker tour. I'd been looking forward to today because as part of the travel permit is a bush tucker tour. We are shown and get to try a variety of bush tucker food, including bush bananas, black currants, bush tomatoes and coconuts. Travelling around the country with commentary from the locals is just great. There is no denying this is bloody tough country. They shared some Dreamtime stories of what had to be done to feed the families, with hunting trips which sometimes lasted days, and what they would have to do to catch things like emu and other food sources. With the Gibbler stones and red dirt, the temperature would reach extremes, and the only reprieve being the sheltered outcrops and overhangs of the area. Extra care needs to be taken as gidgee roots lie on the edge of the track just waiting for their next victim. One of the highlights was the tour out to Goiters Pillar to watch the sunset. We were there early, so had a chance to have a good look around at some of the artefacts from previous generations of the Bookie family around the rock shelters that they used to frequent. Just some trivia: the first white man to successfully travel through this area was the South Australian surveyor Charles Winnicki in mid-1883. Winnicki named many landforms in the area, including Hay River and the Goiters Pillar, which he named after G.W. Goiter, the Surveyor General of South Australia. What a bloody amazing day. We gathered around the campfire with a few beverages to review the day, and for everybody, it was a big thumbs up. Thanks, guys. It's a pretty straightforward run from Batten Hill to the Plenty Highway. With some of the vehicles looking for a drink, we travelled west a short distance to Jerville Station to satisfy this thirst, before turning east and heading to Boulia, which would be our destination for tonight. A quick stop at the tallest termite mound on the highway, so they tell us. Then it's across the border from the Northern Territory and into Queensland. We're keeping some distance between vehicles to allow for better visibility and the poor old engine to not suck in someone else's dust. Arriving into Boulia, we top up with fuel. We've booked at the caravan park tonight, so essential washing and a nice shower were the order of the day. Then we sit and enjoy an Outback sunset. We had dinner at the pub last night and had a chance to reflect on the trip so far. The morning's activity included a trip to the Min Min Museum. Then we make our way out to the heart of the Diamantina Lakes area and camp at Hunter's Gorge. With lots and lots of gravel road ahead, we soldier on. A quick stop at the Warracuda waterhole. The tradition states a legendary hero was in love with a beautiful girl who was in love with another. Enraged, he tried to kill her with his boomerang. She ducked, and it fell to the ground, forming the shape of the waterhole. Her spirit remains in the water, protecting the area. Then on to the site of some ruins. This site is marked with a plaque with just questions really. It's obviously man-made, but total mystery surrounds the site. We set up our camp behind the waterfront cooler bars and were treated to an unending display of bird life. The kings of the waterhole were undoubtedly the pelicans that sailed impressively up and down the waterway, occasionally taking time to fish and to squabble amongst themselves. Cormorants and ducks took their chances fishing beside these large pelicans. The waterhole trees are home to thousands of these birds, with the noisiest being the corellas and the galahs. As we settled in and watched the sun start to sink into the horizon, these corellas return noisily to their nesting trees for the evening. I'm pretty sure that I'm not going to need an alarm clock in the morning. Yep, I was right. No alarm clock needed. We have a big travel day ahead of us today with a couple of stops on the way. The first was the main hotel ruins. Just outside the park, heading towards Winton, is the main hotel ruins. There's not much left of the old hotel, but still evident are the structural timbers and underground cellar, where beverages were kept as cool as possible in the summer temperatures that could reach as high as 50 degrees C. And that's in the shade. With no fridges, novel ways had to be found to keep the beer cold. They would open the cellar doors of a night to let the cool air in, and close during the day to protect from the heat. Next stop was Old Cork Station. The property is reported as having been first settled in 1870s and finally abandoned as a homestead for property farm workers in the 1980s. Material available from the Information Centre at Winton suggests that with the changes in ownership, records of Old Cork Station have been lost. You can try to imagine what it might have been like living at Old Cork Station year in, year out, through flood and summer heat, through good years and bad, but such imagings can never summon up the reality. And as the song says, for the years have surely gone like the drays from Old Cork Station. Despite that, and the heat, and of course the flies, how good is it to be able to go and see the traces of what remains at places like Old Cork Station, and to think about how much the pioneer settlers and drovers shaped the character and culture of Australia. We spent the morning exploring Winton, including the Walsing Matilda Centre and of course Arno's Wall. This is made from homewares of all descriptions and was collected from the local tip, then set in stone. It is 2 metres high and 70 metres long. At this point we say goodbye to our travelling companions, as this is where the tag-along officially ends, and we start to make our way to Longreach. At Longreach, we had allowed ourselves 2 days to check out a couple of major attractions that had been on our bucket list for ages. We stayed in some accommodation in Longreach and prepared ourselves for a full day of exploring at the Stockman's Hall of Fame and other features in and around town. This was great, checking out some of the themed areas and immersing ourselves in our forefathers' history. What a fantastic day. The following morning, with only a short drive to Longreach, we spent most of the day at the Qantas Museum soaking up our early aviation history. The museum tells the story of Australia's national airline, from its early days in Outback, Queensland to present day. Characters of the early Qantas days, their pioneering spirit and the impact the airline had for all Australians is brought to life through the life-size exhibits, historical artefacts and interactive displays, including the National Heritage listed Qantas hangar. We enjoyed an informative guided tour of the Boeing 707 and the decommissioned Boeing 747. Both the Hall of Fame and the Qantas Museum did not disappoint and is a must if you're in the area. After leaving Longreach, the next stop is Barcaldine, Barky as the locals call it, and we called in to see the Tree of Knowledge. The monument, signifying protruding shear blades that were used to shear sheep, is in recognition of the stalwart men and women of the West who, through their courage, determination and dedication to principles, objectives and ideals, played a leading role in the formation of Australia's Labor Party. We make our way to Argathella that night. After pitching the tent, we try out some of the dehydrated meals that we packed for our trip. Judgment is withheld. With around 750 kilometres to home, this gives us time enough to start planning our next adventure. Thanks for watching.